will be a marathon as Trump promises a long speech about the State of the Union. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It will be Donald Trump in prime time, with the world wondering what the U.S. president will say during his State of the Union address. There are many issues, there are many subplots, such as who will be there. It is likely some members of the gold medal-winning U.S. men's hockey team will be in attendance. Trump called the men's hockey team just after they defeated Team Canada and said he would send a plane to pick them up.
You know, I tell you what, I just told my people 2 minutes ago, I didn't know they'd be calling. I said, we're giving the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night. I could send a military plane or something, but if you would like to, it's the coolest night, it's the biggest.
We're in.
Yeah,
Can you pick us up in Miami on Tuesday morning?
Yeah, Tuesday morning. Close the northern border. We'll get cash and we'll get the military to get you guys over.
Let's go.
The gold medal winning U.S. women's hockey team won't be at tonight's speech. That team declined Trump's invitation, with reports saying it was because he said he'd be impeached if he didn't invite the women's team as well.
Now we'll do it at the White House anytime. What would really be cool, and we'll do the White House the next day, we'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. I do believe I probably would be impeached, okay?
In a statement, the U.S. women's team said it had previously scheduled academic and professional commitments and wouldn't be able to attend. It is tradition that the U.S. justices of the Supreme Court attend the State of the Union address. That could be extra awkward this time around, given the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision that struck down parts of Trump's tariff policy, which led to Trump lashing out at the High Court last week.
I think the decision was terrible. Yeah. I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth.
Supreme Court justices who ruled against this the policy, striking it down, are they still invited to your State of the Union next week?
They are invited, barely. Barely. 3 are happily invited. No, they're barely invited. Honestly, I couldn't care less if they come, okay?
If you are planning to watch, settle in. It's going to be a long one. Last year's State of the Union address from Donald Trump was a record breaker. He spoke for an hour and 40 minutes, and just yesterday, Trump said he has a lot to talk about.
So, we have a country that's now doing well. We have the greatest economy we've ever had. We have the most activity we've ever had. I'm making a speech tomorrow night, and you'll be hearing me say that. It's going to be a long speech because we have so much to talk about.
In leaks to the media, the White House is saying the theme for the speech will be America at 250. Strong, prosperous, and respected. It's a reference to the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. But it's arriving as Trump's poll numbers are sliding. A new CNN poll suggests less than a third of Americans think Trump has the right priorities. His approval numbers among independents are at a new low, and he's struggling to win the support of Latino voters. CNN's Harry Enton with more.
Talking about the lowest Trump has ever been going into the State of the Union, the lowest that any president has been this century going into a State of the Union at this point in their presidency. It is also the weakest that Donald Trump has ever been with independents. Look at this drop. We've been talking about it the past few months. At this point, a year ago, Donald Trump was at minus 13 points. Look at this, minus 47 points among independents, the lowest Donald Trump has ever been in either of his 2 terms as president with independents. That is driving these numbers. When you're 47 points underwater with independents, that's the name of the game. You can't be above water overall, and that is why Donald Trump is near record lows overall and the lowest he's ever been going into a State of the Union address.
Several Democrats are planning to boycott the State of the Union address. They will attend a counter event on the National Mall instead. The official response from the Democrats to the State of the Union will be delivered by Abigail Spanberger. She once worked for the CIA, was a member of the U.S. Congress. She's now the governor of Virginia, and she has slammed the Trump administration before.
And I know many of you are worried about the recklessness coming out of Washington. You are worried about policies that are hurting our communities, cutting healthcare access, imperiling rural hospitals, and driving up costs. You are worried about Washington policies that are closing off markets, hurting innovation and private industry, and attacking those who have devoted their lives to public service. You are worried about an administration that is gilding buildings while schools crumble, breaking the social safety net and sowing fear across our communities, betraying the values of who we are as Americans, the very values that we celebrate here on these steps.
During last year's State of the Union address, Trump talked a lot about immigration and border security and DOGE, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. And Canada came up too.
We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer. Much has been said over the last 3 months about Mexico and Canada, but we have very large deficits with both of them. But even more importantly, they've allowed fentanyl to come into our country at levels never seen before, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens and many very young, beautiful people, destroying families. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. They are, in effect, receiving subsidies of hundreds of billions of dollars. We pay subsidies to Canada and to Mexico of hundreds of billions of dollars, and the United States will not be doing that any longer. We're not going to do it any longer.
Foreign policy also expected to be raised by the president. This is the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There's been a massive U.S. military buildup in the Middle East to put pressure on Iran. There was U.S. action in Venezuela to remove Maduro from power and increased pressure from the United States on Cuba. The speech, the ceremony, it all begins at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, he is back for his weekly visit with his view on some of the big issues that are in the news. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Rob. Always enjoy speaking with you.
It is budget time for provincial governments. The news is not great. BC, budget deficit $13 billion. Recently had its credit rating downgraded. New Brunswick's budget deficit, $1.4 billion, doubled in a year. New Brunswick's GDP is only $35 billion, a $1.4 billion budget deficit. Nova Scotia's budget deficit, $1.2 billion, recent credit rating downgrade. Thursday is budget day in Alberta. The number could hit $10 billion for the budget deficit for Alberta. I see a trend here. Why do you think it's happening?
My own view, and I'm going to give I like to use empirical data, but I'm going to have to give you, because you asked me what I think is driving it. I cannot say to you it's being driven by the economic conditions. Some listeners may say, what are you talking about? Have you not heard of Trump? Yet you look at the unemployment data, we're not in a recession. You look at the GDP data, we're not in a recession. For those who say, well, what about the tariffs? We have been hit less by the tariffs than any other country on planet Earth. That's what the studies are showing. Because CUSMA has protected us, because most of the goods that go to the States are CUSMA compliant, therefore exempt from all of these crazy tariffs. So what I'm trying to say is, although there's an awful lot of sturm and drang and shouting and name-calling and anger and hostility, you look at the economic fundamentals, and we're not in a recession. There's no justification. So, to your question, why are they doing this? And I'm going to come up with an answer that isn't perhaps that nice, but politicians are weak. They're weak, no matter whether they're liberal or conservative or NDP. And I'm not trying to be an armchair quarterback. Their job is very tough. It must be a horrible job being a politician, especially when your head is on the chopping block as the premier. And people scream at you and insult you and they protest against you. And it's just so easy to say, oh, hell, why am I fighting them all? This is give them what they want. And every year, people want more, whether it's this interest group or that interest group or whatever. And so there's an inexorable pressure in democratic countries. This has been studied, by the way, extensively by economists and political scientist professors. In a democracy, there's a propensity for spending to continually rise. There's more voices yelling and screaming for more spending than there are for voices saying we got to dial back the spending. And so it's almost a psychological or answer I'm giving you. There's no economic, or this is not 2009. This is not 1980. This is not COVID. The unemployment rate is in very good shape. Inflation's coming down. It's not there yet in all areas, but there is no justification for this gargantuan increase in British Columbia. And the markets are, the credit markets that grant the credit ratings are responding, especially to the smaller provinces like Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and they're much smaller, or heavily indebted provinces like BC.
What about the demographics that are at play here, Professor, and the fact that provinces are largely responsible for the delivery of health care? Yes. What role do you think that is playing?
Well, for sure. There's no question. In fact, let me go a little bit further. The provinces have all the heavy lifting, so to speak. They're responsible for not just health care. They're responsible for education, which is very expensive, whether it's primary school, secondary, or college, university. And of course, they're responsible for the municipalities. Yes, the municipalities are somewhat independent, but they are creatures of the province. And of course, the municipalities are dealing with garbage collection and all that stuff. And now you overlay on top of all that the aging of the population, and the Maritimes, sadly and unfortunately, is demographically more challenged than anywhere else in Canada. A lot of young people leave to go get jobs, in Toronto and elsewhere, and they leave. And so, those are the future taxpayers, and they leave. And the elder people are the people that are, retiring and consuming resources. So that's part of the problem facing the maritime provinces. I just want to say one more thing, Rob, because a lot of people say, look, the federal government runs deficits. What's the problem with provincial? And we tend to think that there's no real difference. One's fed, one's provincial, but otherwise no difference. That is not true. That is false.
Why?
The federal government has a printing press. It's called the Sovereign Bank, the Federal Bank, the Bank of Canada. Most national governments have a printing press. The provincial governments do not. What that means in plain English is that when they have a deficit, they literally have to go to the bond market. The Ministry of Finance in Ontario or BC or Nova Scotia must go to the bond market and say, will you please buy our bonds from the province of Ontario or the province of New Brunswick? And if your credit rating is good, you'll have no problem selling those bonds. There's pension funds and various buyers out there that want to buy a good, stable provincial government bond. However, sometimes they won't, like Newfoundland in the last COVID period, where the bond market said, look, we're not going to buy your bonds because you're too high risk. This is a problem with excessive provincial indebtedness.
All right, we'll be right back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School at Carleton University. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
So we're back with Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is earnings season for the big banks in Canada. The economy's not great. The housing market is not great. The employment situation is not great, but these banks are still making money hand over fist. Scotiabank out today, big numbers.
Yes.
How is it that the big banks in Canada can make so much money in good times and in bad?
Yes, you're right. They can. They do. Full disclosure, I do not consult, don't have any investments other than I'm a customer of the bank, like 99% of Canadians are, according to the stats I've looked at. But I am a strong believer in the Canadian banking system. I believe that the Big Five are the strongest, five of the strongest banks on planet Earth. They're extraordinarily well managed, and they are very old. They go back. Some of our banks are older than Canada, and the rest are as old as Canada. So they have deep experience. But let me give you a better answer than that. There's a real good answer. The banks are diversified in multiple ways, and I don't mean diversified in the sense they own shares in pharmaceuticals or manufacturing. First off, they are from coast to coast to coast. Most countries, banks specialize in one region. Our banks are in every part of the country, but they're not only diversified in that sense. They lend to every industry and service every last industry in this country. So they're diversified in that sense. They're also diversified in the sense that they lend not only to business, but they also lend to consumers. They have very strong consumer portfolios. They have business portfolios, small, medium, and large. And then on top of that, they were allowed after banking deregulation back in 2000, when the pillars were taken down, banks could now and did go into insurance and into wealth management like Goldman Sachs. And so they're not only in commercial banking, where I worked years ago, but they're in investment banking, which is a different, very different business. That's raising capital on the stock exchange for a company like Google. And then finally, they've diversified into the United States, the largest economy on planet Earth. So because of the very, very strong management for years and years, decades and decades, in these five success stories, if we have any success stories in Canada, it's our five banks. They weather the storms, the financial storms of the ups and the downs, better than any other industry, in my opinion. And that explains why they are able to do so well, even though the economy right now, for example, is not doing so well.
Gotcha. Where are you today, anyway?
I am in Naples, Florida, but I am coming home in 3 days.
Okay.
And I'm not cutting classes for anybody who thinks I am. I'm on a half sabbatical.
Half sabbatical.
And I continue to work. I continue to do research. I'm writing an op-ed right now on the Trump
very
tariffs.
clearly.
Yes, and I'm doing an op-ed for Maclean's magazine.
Naples, Florida. Okay. It's minus 13 in Ottawa right now, just to let you know where you're coming home to.
I know. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. 15 degrees in Naples, Florida right now. So a nice, 30 degree swing for you, Professor.
Thank you. It's going to 25 tomorrow. It's going to 25 tomorrow.
Good to hear from you, though. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
It's time for our Newsday panel. It is Focus Alberta. On Tuesdays, healthcare will be a big topic today. With Chris Gallaway, Executive Director, Friends of Medicare. Nice to hear from you again. Chris Gallaway, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
And Dr. Shawn Whatley, physician, healthcare issues author, and commentator. Good to hear from you again. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Chris Gallaway, what is your reaction to Premier Smith's plan to hold a referendum on several healthcare / immigration related issues?
Well, it was pretty frustrating watching the Premier's address, because this is a Premier who pushed for more immigration, who talked about growing Alberta to 10 million people, who continued the Alberta is Calling campaign while bragging about record population growth. but she's also the premier who did things like cancel the South Edmonton Hospital project. That's a project that was already underway, could have been opened this year, adding capacity to the Alberta hospital system. And, she made those decisions. And now that Albertans are concerned about capacity in our hospitals, she's trying to point in other directions, blaming immigration, sowing division, talking about referendums, anything to avoid taking responsibility for her decisions and fixing the mess that she helped to create. So it's very frustrating to see this tactic happen when really we need leadership on healthcare.
Dr. Whatley, what do you think about it?
Well, I think Chris makes a good point. The government's promised to provide care for Canadians. That's what's happened with Medicare, right? We have to have a single payer system in each province. So the province has to have an insurance program that pays for all medically necessary care. And then when it can't pay for care, when it can't provide services, it says, well, maybe we should ask the citizens what they think. So I agree with the cynicism there. I support Chris on that. Having said that, you do get to a point. So Premier Smith didn't invent this approach to providing care. She wasn't there in 1968 when it was passed. She wasn't there when it was enforced again with the Canada Health Act. And so she's been handed a structurally dysfunctional system from the get-go. And now she's saying, listen, citizens, we haven't been able to improve this. Would you support some change? So if that's the flavor she's taking, I support her. If, on the other hand, as Chris said, she's just saying, hey, what do you think about this mess? Then, yeah, it's good to be a bit skeptical.
What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, and, some of the questions she's talking about asking, it's pretty unclear what she actually means, like how she's defining, this category of people that she thinks maybe shouldn't have access to health care. When questioned on how much she thinks that's costing the province, she couldn't name a number. So it seems like a distraction type of an issue where it's not really based in facts or evidence or a real policy concern as much as a distraction. And what we know is when people move to Canada, into Alberta to work, they pay taxes here. They're paying into the system. Often they're working in the healthcare system. So who is she even talking about that she's concerned about? Because what we know when we cut programs for folks like refugees who are here in Canada, if we cut their health benefits, what ends up happening is they end up in our emergency rooms once they're sick enough to really need care because they've avoided care or couldn't afford it until then. So it's pretty unclear what she's talking about, how it might save money, or why it's...
Well, I would say it's pretty clear about who she's talking about. It's about people who are supposed to be here temporarily. Let's dig into some of the wording of some of these questions. One of the questions is, do you support the government of Alberta introducing a law mandating that only Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and individuals with an Alberta-approved immigration status be eligible for provincially funded programs such as healthcare, education, and other social services? What do you think of that, Chris?
Well, what does she mean by Alberta approved is a question. But it's also, we've had historically in Alberta for years, governments who've pushed for more and more temporary foreign workers, and then when it becomes an issue or a concern, they suddenly flip and claim they're opposed to that program. So there's a lot of hypocrisy baked into what's happening right now. And folks who are here on a temporary work permit have to have health coverage. So it's not totally clear to me who she's singling out in these questions and the wording of these questions.
Okay, what do you think about the wording of a question like that, Dr. Whatley?
Well, I think it's courageous of her to say to ask the citizens whether or not they support defending the government's ability to be able to provide necessary care for the citizens of Alberta. And I would think that's a given. That's why we have governments. That's what we expect our government to do. They promise to provide care, and she wants to know, do voters actually support them delivering on that mandate? So part of it I support. On the other hand, though, again, Chris makes a good point. I mean, if you've got people in your jurisdiction that don't have coverage, then it sounds like maybe you need legislation like they have in other countries around social insurance. It's just like if you want to drive a car on the road, you must have a valid insurance policy. And so you could make the same argument. If you want to come to work in Alberta, you have to purchase your own private insurance, or you have to go through the process of qualifying for the provincial insurance. So I think there's a solution on both sides. And I'll close with this. Chris also, again, makes a good point. I mean, doctors especially, but I believe nurses as well. We take an oath. You have to provide life and limb care. We have standards of practice. You don't ask, do you have money when someone needs care? When they come for care, you provide the care, and then you ask, you sort out the payment after the fact, especially if it's life-threatening care. So, traditionally, the medical community has been very supportive of any kind of insurance that the government can set up or that the companies can set up. And so I'm not sure we can critique people for saying, yes, we need to provide care for our citizens, but that separate issue of people who actually don't have coverage right now, I agree, that's something that needs to be sorted out.
Okay, we'll be right back. Focus Alberta, heavy emphasis on healthcare today with Chris Gallaway, Friends of Medicare, Dr. Shawn Whatley, commentator on healthcare-related issues, published widely. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Focus Alberta with a heavy focus on healthcare. Chris Gallaway, Executive Director, Friends of Medicare. Dr. Shawn Whatley, healthcare issues author, commentator. Just more on this referendum set for October for Alberta on immigration / healthcare related issues. One of the questions is, do you support the government of Alberta charging a reasonable fee or premium to individuals with a non-permanent immigration status living in Alberta for their and their families' use of healthcare and education systems? But we're focusing on healthcare. Dr. Whatley, what do you think of that?
Yeah, so like I was saying before the break, it sounds like they're suggesting social insurance. And there's a program that's very common, or an approach rather, that's very common in other countries. And we do the same thing for driving your car on the road. You can't drive your car unless you have a valid insurance certificate. And so it sounds like a similar concept where you're saying if you want to be here, you're a temporary, non-permanent citizen, or not citizen, but resident in our province, you need to actually purchase some sort of insurance for yourself. Now, if you word it in terms of there's a fee you have to pay, that sounds like a penalty. I would change the wording and saying, we're setting up a program for folks that are only here temporarily to be able to pay into a program that will fund their care if they need it. So again, it's more of a social insurance approach.
Okay. Chris Gallaway, what do you think?
Yeah, and I guess the thing I would add to that, to Shawn's point, is that, this is employers who are bringing in temporary foreign workers. So we could also have a system that requires employers to ensure the people they're bringing in have some form of coverage rather than putting that onto the people coming to work. Because, what is that fee going to be? How much is it? What if they can't pay it? And what we know happens, vaccines are a good example. If people don't have the access, they can't afford to pay out of pocket, that actually puts all of us at risk because we're not protecting the public health when people are here. So, if we're going to have this debate about coverage and people who are here in Alberta, we shouldn't necessarily put the onus on workers who are here temporarily and often low-wage workers. Right. So, we should have a policy discussion that really looks at the issue beyond throwing a referendum out there. The need for a referendum to solve this doesn't exist.
Okay. I want to move on to other things. The Alberta government was supposed to have triage liaison physicians in some emergency rooms to help better prioritize patients. What happened to that plan? What do you think of that idea? Dr. Whatley? Dr. Shawn Whatley, what do you think of that idea?
So I'm nervous that you asked me this question, Rob, because I think it's the dumbest idea. I can't say enough strong language against it. Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
It's like, if you had a cut and we put a bandage on it and you continued to bleed and we said, oh, here, Rob, we need another bandage for the bandage that's already failing. Triage is a bandage for wait times. You should not be triaging in the first place. So I wrote my whole book on this. Sorry for getting so passionate. No more lethal waits, 10 steps to transform Canada's emergency departments. You need to get rid of waiting rooms, get rid of triage, get the patients inside the hospitals. Tons of research on this. Patients go to emerge to see the doc and get treated as fast as physically possible. Putting another bandage on a triage system, which is already a bandage, is a mistake. And I better stop there. I get too excited about this topic.
Okay. I think Chris wants you to continue, but Chris Gallaway, what do you think, Chris Gallaway?
I appreciate the passion. And it's true. We have a situation in our hospitals where, having another person in the waiting room triaging doesn't help if there's not a bed in the emergency room to move people into, if there's not beds upstairs in acute care to move people into, if people can't get moved out of the hospital into continuing care or accessing home care to go home, then having another person in the waiting room isn't going to solve that problem. We actually have to solve the problem of the patient flow through our entire hospital system. Speaking to frontline workers, they absolutely could use more staff in the emergency departments in our hospital. They're feeling overwhelmed, but a triage position alone won't help it. And I think we need to remember that this policy announcement came out of the government. There was a prominent death in an Edmonton emergency department, and after weeks of public pressure, they finally came out to claim they were doing something about this, and threw out this policy claiming we would have these new positions by February 1st, and now it's February 24th, and they haven't hired a single position. So again, it feels like this policy distraction that they threw out there to look like they're doing something about the problem, when the real problem is much bigger, which is what Shawn was pointing to.
Okay, Dr. Whatley, I want to know a little bit more why you think this is, to you, is the dumbest idea. Okay, triage. I mean, surely to goodness, you must triage people in an ER. Like if I come in and I have a sprained ankle, I'm less urgent than somebody who is coming in and they potentially might be having a massive heart attack. So I'm a little unclear why triage is a bad thing.
Well, if you define triage as simply sorting, so you have someone right at the front and you say, yeah, you're going straight to the acute room, you're going to the minor area, so you immediately bring them into the department, okay, I can support that. But when you say triage in Canada, that's not what you're talking about. We've developed a world-famous 5-point system. We have a 3 or 4 page questionnaire that you have to go through, a whole bunch of steps that have to be completed. And as Chris said, really it's a Band-Aid on the failure of a much bigger problem. So, or the evidence of a failure that speaks to a bigger problem of flow and lack of capacity. But even despite that, even with no beds in the hospital and no flow and you're overwhelmed, we have good evidence to show that patients get better care if you do not leave them in a chair in the waiting room. You bring them straight in. You can't tell if someone's having a headache and it's just a migraine, or is there blood in their head? The only way you can tell that is by getting them in, getting them seen, get their CAT scan if they need it, or if you're having just stomach upset and it turns out to be a heart attack. The best way you can get care for that patient is get them seen immediately. And so putting a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid, I couldn't speak more strongly against it.
All right, when we come back, ahead of the budget in Alberta, Budget Day in Alberta's Thursday, the Smith government is revealing a plan to increase physician pay by 22%. We'll talk about that when we return. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Every Tuesday, it's Focus Alberta. Our focus on Focus Alberta today is healthcare in Alberta. Lots of news on that. Chris Gallaway, Executive Director, Friends of Medicare, with us. Dr. Shawn Whatley writes about healthcare issues, writes books about healthcare issues. Budget Day in Alberta's Thursday. The Smith government has now announced a plan to increase the pay of physicians by 22%. Chris Gallaway, what do you think of that news? Chris?
The government has warned us that it's not going to be a great news budget this year, so they're trying to get some good news heading into it. And we're also seeing the government react to Albertans being quite unhappy with their record on healthcare. This is the 4th press conference about healthcare in a week. But in terms of the actual announcement on physician compensation, what we heard from the AMA in response is that they didn't even know this was happening, and they don't understand what calculations are being used to come to the number that the government shared yesterday. So, we don't have the details to say what was this actually about. Some of the statistics that were shared didn't have further details to explain what they meant. So, is this just funding the physician compensation agreement they've already agreed to? What's actually happening here? Well, we're waiting to see the budget on Thursday to have a strong opinion on what they announced yesterday, because it was mostly a political speech at a press conference.
Dr. Shawn Whatley, what do you think?
Well, 22% sounds like a pretty huge number, no question, and I'm glad that you're asking about it. I typed in the inflation rates in the Bank of Canada calculator. Any of your listeners can do it from 2020 to 2026, and the inflation is 20.61%. So just the background inflation from 2020 to 2026, almost 21%. So it sounds like maybe they're getting a 1.4% raise. But on top of that, the medical supplies, medical staffs, the cost of running a medical clinic always runs above inflation. We've known that for 3 or 4 decades. But before we talk even about that, the number one thing that you care about, Rob, when you are bleeding from a ruptured aortic aneurysm in the middle of the night and the emerge doc's talking to you, you want to know that a vascular surgeon is going to pick up the phone. So when I worked in emerge, I'm calling my vascular surgeon saying, Rob Snow is having a rupturing aortic aneurysm. He will bleed to death in 20 minutes.
Sounds pretty bleak for Rob Snow right now. Oh, my goodness.
Well, I want someone to show up and take care of you. And
so does Rob Snow.
We need to know. Well, that's the number one thing. So we need to fund physicians well enough so that they actually are there to provide care.
All right. I'm just going to do some knocking on wood right here. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. No, look, I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much. Some serious issues. And we're following it with great interest. Yeah. Dr. Whatley, good to hear from you today. And Chris Gallaway from Friends of Medicare, good to hear from you as well. And that is Focus Alberta again for this week. I'm Rob Snow. The latest breaking news, alive and kicking. The latest breaking news is coming up next. And then it's Talkback. Interesting one for you this week. Gen Z. Dumbest generation ever? That's a little tease for you. That's coming up. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. This is a big one. Gen Z, or Gen Z if you prefer. Gen Z, I prefer that. Here's what we want to know. It has been in the news recently that Gen Z will be the first generation that will be less intelligent than the previous generation. And that screen time is to blame. And what we want to know is, do you think that's true? And if so, what should be done about it? Do you think Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations? And is screen time to blame? And if that's true, what should be done about it? Let's get into this, okay? This is a very interesting topic. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. According to recent news reports, for the first time in history, the younger generation has a lower IQ than the one that came before it. These are news reports based on recent testimony that a neuroscientist, Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, gave to a committee of the United States Senate. And he said that the generation born between 1997 and the early 2010s has been, his term, not mine, cognitively stunted. Cognitively stunted. Because of an over-reliance on digital technologies. What do you think about that? The younger people these days are cognitively stunted because they spend so much time on their screens. Do you think he's on to something? He says there have been noticeable declines in attention span, memory, reading, math skills, problem-solving abilities, and overall IQ. And he noted that this is actually happening despite this generation spending more time in school than any other generation. And he claims it is directly tied to an increase in the amount of learning that is now carried out using what he calls educational technology, or EdTech, computers, tablets. In an interview, Dr. Horvath said, humans are biologically programmed to learn from other humans from deep study. quote, not flipping through screens for bullet point summaries. This is being called a cognitive catastrophe and digital dementia, or in more crude terms, brain rot. Brain rot. Is technology rotting the brains of young people? Is technology rotting the brains of young people? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Our phone lines are open right now. Experts are warning standardized test scores are falling. Math and literacy skills are weakening. Young people are losing the ability to reason and think critically. And there are fears that all of these trends could accelerate with the wider adoption of AI. What do you think of these claims? Do you think that those in the Gen Z age group think 14 years old to say 26, 27, 28, less intelligent? Less intelligent than the generations that came before? If that's the case, what are some examples? Okay, what are some examples you might come across in your everyday life when you interact with someone in that age group that might suggest they might not be as intelligent as older generations when they were the same age? Do you find people of that age can solve problems without having to ask their digital device for help? When you get an email from someone of that age, how's that? Spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, stumped by math questions. If you've hired someone of this age to work for you, what have you noticed? If you've conducted a job interview, what have you seen? If you've hired someone, what's that like? Can they do the job? Do they need constant supervision? Have you noticed any evidence of these claims that memory is compromised? Can they remember phone numbers? Get from point A to point B without using Google Maps? What about attention span? Can they concentrate on specific tasks that might take a while to finish? Or does it all nowadays have to be a short form video on TikTok? What are you seeing in your own day-to-day life? What do you notice? Do you think it's as bad as some of these experts are saying it is? And if it is, what should we do about it? Not everyone agrees that Gen Z is in some way cognitively compromised compared to older generations. Dumber. There's some people who say that they just learn in different ways. Maybe ways that aren't traditionally measured. Maybe standardized tests aren't capturing new skills that young people have today. Is there truth to that? Or are our young people suffering because of brain rot from digital devices? Is it making them dumber? Is it the dumbest generation? Because that's the suggestion. It's even some of the headlines. Dumbest generation. Because digital technology is part of their everyday lives. At least half of their waking lives spent on screens. We've produced the dumbest generation. What do you think of that? Any truth to that? Accurate? What should we do about it if it's true? Do we take the computers out of the schools? No more tablets in the classrooms? Bring back the chalkboard and the textbook? The intelligence of Gen Z. Are they really less intelligent than previous generations? Or just as intelligent in ways maybe we don't fully appreciate right now? Offer an opinion. The number to call, 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you have never called before, you just mentioned that. We'll make your call a priority today. Let's talk about this issue, the intelligence of Gen Z. Compromised by technology? I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So it's been in the news. Gen Z less intelligent than previous generations. They say it's never happened before. Blamed on excessive screen time. What do you think about that? Is it true? If it's true, what should be done about it? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you don't think it's true, why don't you think it's true? I mean, think about the claim, the accusation, the allegation. It's rather damning. Less intelligent. What do you think? Joe is in Kitchener, up first today on Talkback. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Rob. Yeah, this is a particularly disturbing topic for me because I just can't wrap my head around the whole Gen Z parenting. When I grew up, we played kick the can. We played hide and seek. We built tree forts out of scrap wood. We went down into the park. We explored. We learned about nature on our own. And, I built my first bike out of spare parts from the leftovers from my brothers and sisters because I was the youngest of a large family. Now, these Gen Z parents, what do? First thing they can, they hand their kid a tablet or a cell phone and say, hey, let's leave them in the corner and let's go have gin and tea with the neighbors while the kid goes and plays about instead of actually going out into the real world. How about we burn the helicopter and let the kid go and experience the real world? Heaven forbid. So you wonder why these kids are turning into what they are today. It's because of poor parenting. The parents don't care, or they care too much. But what they do as a result is hand all these kids technology and say, oh, well, the technology will keep them busy. No, that's not a way to grow up. That is not a way to develop. I put my kids in martial arts. They won locals. They won provincials. They won Canadians. And they said,
Right.
oh, well, let's see. Let's put them in the worlds and see what they do there. And then they won the worlds. You want your kids to grow and flourish?
Yes.
Make them become something and be a part of it.
Yeah, I understand this, Joe, but do you think this is true that Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations?
Absolutely.
Okay. Why do you think
Absolutely.
that?
Because you give them a tablet, you give them technology, they pick and choose what they want to look, not the boring stuff that you might actually learn something from. No, it's the glitzy, glammy stuff that kids are attracted to, that are targeted by, Meta and all these big giants that target kids. And then you're not there. You're Gen Z parent. You're not there. How the hell would you know what they're looking at? So they look at all this crap instead of stuff that they can actually learn from because that's too boring. That's
okay,
too
but
boring.
could it be that they're acquiring maybe different skills that you and I didn't acquire when we were, the same age?
Like what?
Like being computer savvy, technology savvy, these sorts of things.
Oh, sure. They know how to move an app widget from here to there, which, admittedly, it's not my forte. But you want me to solve a problem in real time? I'll solve it for you. You want these kids to solve a problem in real time? Like your water heater breaks down or something like that? How the hell are they ever going to know? Are they going to go on a tablet and look for a YouTube video that's going to tell them how to do that?
Oh, maybe.
What if they never picked up a wrench before?
Maybe.
In their life?
You see the ads. You see the ads on television where they're pointing the phone, talking to the AI assistant. Hey, how do I boost this car? The phone tells them. This sort of stuff.
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful? No, Rob,
no.
I honestly
less intelligent. So you're convinced they're less intelligent. You blame it on the parents. Okay, fair enough. Just like that, we're off and running. 4 lines available. 1-833-668-2577. The Flynn effect, they call it. The Flynn effect has come to an end. We can talk about what that is, why some are alarmed about it, but I want to know, is this what you are seeing in your everyday interaction with that teenager of yours or someone in their 20s? Are they really less intelligent, dumber than previous generations? 1-833-668-2577. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We have experts saying Gen Z less intelligent is less than intelligent than previous generations. Gen Z is less intelligent. What do you think of that claim? They say it's never happened before. It's blamed on excessive screen time, particularly in classroom settings. Tanzus, Cambridge, right?
Zoltan. The name is Zoltan.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why it says Tanzus here, but what do you think? I mean, think about this accusation. Gen Z less intelligent than previous generations. What do you think about that? Do you think it's true?
I don't know if it's true or not, but I'll tell you, I'll relay something to you that happened to me a little while ago. I was first shocked. I was amazed. Then I was appalled at what was going on in front of me. I bought $7.60 worth of, $8.60 of groceries. I handed the girl a $10 bill. Now, generally, there's a light on that tells you that when she punches it in, it'll automatically tell them what to give back. It wasn't working that day. She couldn't figure out a simple binary function.
Oh my goodness.
She finally had to go to her telephone to figure out the damn thing was it owed me $1.40. And I'm not saying she was, challenged mentally or anything else. I think a lot of it is you're so used to. I remember when you're so used to picking up something a piece of equipment to do your work for you. I couldn't take anything but a pencil and a ruler and so on to an exam. I couldn't take even a calculator.
Sure.
So is it because they're not as intelligent, or have they not used their faculties enough? This poor girl was having a near nervous breakdown. She was trying and trying and trying to make change. She could not do it. And then finally picked up the phone, hit the calculator, and figured it out that way.
Well, is this lack of, as you say, using their faculties, is it leading to a generation that is dumber than generations before if you can't figure out that the change is $1.40?
I don't know if it's dumber or not, but they're not using what they have in their head. Even at best, Einstein and people like that only used a small portion of their brain. These people rely strictly on the calculator, on anything but what they have to do. People take calculators to a math test. How ridiculous is that?
Okay, so do you think then we should go back to those days? No computers in the classroom. No calculators.
Try some of that in a classroom. A final exam or maybe a medium exam inside the classroom that makes you think. And there was some other stuff, problem solving. That was a problem for her. All she had to do was subtract one number from another, and she would have had it soon. I felt so sorry for her, but I could not stop her. I just couldn't. I never seen that before in my life, nor have I seen it since. But she was between, I'd say, 18, 22, 23. So I just think it's lack of use.
Lack of use. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Lou in Calgary. Hi, Lou. You with me, Lou? Yeah. Hi,
yes,
Lou.
I am.
Yeah. Good. Do you think this is true?
Anyway.
Do you think this is true, Lou?
Well, I got all I can do is compare other kids to my grandkids. I started a club for teenagers or kids in 18 to 20, 25, how to build cars, how to rebuild their cars or their vehicles.
All right. All right.
All
right. They're playing the music. Lou, you just hang on. I want to hear more about your story, okay? I want to hear more about your story and your comparison here. Very curious. to have your insight. Just hang on the line. We'll bring you up to date on the latest breaking news, and then we'll get right back to your call. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rod Snow.
We are digging into this claim Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations. Less intelligent. Lou was on the line. I believe Lou is still there. Hi, Lou.
I'm still there. I'm still here.
Yeah, great. Thank you for being patient.
You know,
Go ahead.
I've got two grandkids. They're working on vehicles. They're rebuilding them, and you know, they're intelligent. They're quite intelligent, but their resource, their information, is from YouTube or something on the website. And you know, I've seen them rebuild an engine, put a new fender on a vehicle, work on electronics, electronic ignition and everything else. So I don't know that it's just a different resource. I remember 30 years ago, I was a business owner, self-employed, else and doing what I needed to do for my business. I got into the computer. My kids at that time were in their 20s and 30s. I had to teach them how to run a computer because they were busy making $1 and not pay. They didn't need the computer. They didn't know how to run it. So, you know, it's all funny, the way it works. But I don't think the kids are stupid or anything. They use different resources than what we're used to.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm glad you brought that. They're using different resources. One of the things I was going to ask you is, you know, let's take that, 18, 19, 20-year-old Lou who's fixing cars. What are you using as your knowledge base in order to be able to do that? If you're not using something like AI or a YouTube video or whatever the case might be.
Well, we'd pull out the old manuals, the books. We went from that to that resource, you know. But the other thing I wanted to say, because my grandkids got involved in that, I decided, you know, they need mentors. They need people with resources, human resources. So I started a car club, and now we have a bunch of young fellas and gals. They're in the club. We get a body man comes in and he shows them all the techniques and the methods of how to do body work, a mechanic, how to rebuild an engine. So, you know, they're there, and there is a group, at least in this interest of automotive. I've got a whole bunch of people that are young people that are wanting to learn, wanting to do the technical.
Okay, so yeah, the base resource has changed over time. Now, again, what these experts are saying is, look, IQ scores on standardized tests rose generation after generation after generation, happened in countries all over the world, and now it's not.
Yeah, and I think
they're worried about that.
There is a problem. There is a problem, all right. You know, because I still get phone calls about, you know, a problem. Okay, I can't figure this out. Well, they don't have that capacity or don't have that, I don't know, that background from starting from scratch to
problem solving. Yeah. Okay, Lou, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I understand your point. Layla is in Calgary today. Hi, Layla. Good to hear from you.
Hi,
What's
Rob.
your opinion here, Layla? What do you think?
It's definitely kids these days are not getting the same education as we would have back in the day. And I've noticed in the last 5-6 years, schools rely more and more on technology, which in turn, kids rely more and more on technology. They're lacking in critical thinking skills, social skills. Like, for example, I have a daughter that was in grade 5 last year and struggling with spelling. And I kept wondering, well, what's going on? Why aren't they sending spelling test prep sheets home? And then I found out they stopped doing spelling tests and they just use Chromebooks all the time. so they don't need spelling tests because they have Chromebooks. And they just don't, the teacher said they don't see spelling tests as important anymore. It's not useful.
Because of spell check on the computer.
Yeah. Like
right.
Which is frustrating because she's in grade 6 now and still struggles with spelling, which we do work on it at home, but it's hard when she goes to school and 90% of their work is done on Chromebooks. But even when it comes to the critical thinking skills, all kids need to do nowadays is open up Google and Google whatever they need rather than think about it. There's no research
Google whatever Google whatever you need, and if you haven't been introduced to AI, you wait for that because that is something else altogether.
No, our high school daughter was already into the AI, and we had to make her shut that down before she graduated. But
really?
It's just frustrating because kids nowadays, it's just not the same as when we grew up. Everything is far different and more computerized.
Right. And so do you think maybe that should be given a rethink? What do you think?
Oh, 100%. They need to take it back, maybe go back to what things looked like 15, 20 years ago and start there. It gives kids a better chance. Like even when it comes to video games these days, it's before you used to try and fail and keep trying until you succeeded. Now you can try, but there's no failing.
No failing. All right. Interesting. Thank you. I mean, it's a pretty damning indictment of the intelligence of an entire generation. The idea that an entire generation is less intelligent than previous generations, but that's a claim that's being made. That Gen Z is less intelligent than the generations that came before. What do you think is happening? Do you think it's true? What should be done about it? Is it a generation that has become too digitized? 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
To Halifax now, where they're digging out from another big snowstorm. Let's talk to Joe on this issue of Gen Z being less intelligent than previous generations. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Joe. Thank you.
I don't, you'd have to qualify or quantify what, the definition of intelligence is. And I think a couple of your previous callers have already alluded to the fact that there's a number of factors involved. But yeah, definitely we're on the downslide of our intellectual capacity and have been. This downslide, I don't think, is exclusive of Gen Z. I think it's been happening for decades. And someone in my age category, we've had the privilege, or the unfortunate privilege, of watching the parade go by at a much slower pace, and we've watched the downslide of things like critical thinking and common sense, which isn't very common. And I've been watching that myself for a long, long time. And I have a lot of people that are curious how I manage to get by without a computer. I don't have a laptop or a desktop. I don't have an iPad or an Android or a smartphone. I don't even have television. I have TV, but I don't have cable, so I have no television. And they're bewildered how I survive from day to day. That's, I think, the crux of the problem. The values, we've lost our sense of value, the things that are important to us in the quest for better education so we can make more money, so we can buy more things that we probably don't need and maybe don't even want. And we've lost the value of the little things in life, being out in the forest or cutting wood by hand or going for a walk, any number of things, making something. We don't seem to be interested in that anymore. It's all about money. even Scripture talks about the dangers of money, and I've had people say to me, well, even the Bible says that, money is sinful. I said, no, it's not. It's the love of money, and we latched onto this love of money and more and more. Even when we have enough, we want more and more. So I don't think Gen Z should be singled out as being the result of what's been happening for decades. And it's been slow and getting faster all the time. So
okay, but you can't point to things. They're saying you can look at IQ scores, you can look at results from standardized tests, you can look at the scores that are coming in on math and literacy, the questions they ask that test someone's ability to problem solve. They're saying they're seeing deficiencies in attention spans, the ability to focus, concentrate, retain information. The memory for that 18, 19-year-old is not what it was for the 18 or 19-year-old several generations ago.
Rob,
is that not troubling?
When you don't use a muscle, I used to bodybuild, and when you don't use a muscle, it starts to atrophy. And you have to tear down the fibers and let them rebuild with the right nutrients. And it gets bigger and bigger and hopefully stronger and stronger. When you don't use it, it atrophies and goes the other way. And the brain does the same thing from non-use, and we're just not using it anymore. And you've had any number, as I said, any number of callers that have alluded to that with examples. I'm not going to give you any specific examples, but I'll tell you this. When I go outside my door, I see it every day, all day long. Every day, all day long. The lack of mental prowess, the inability to think, to make snap decisions, to think outside the box, and it's in every area. It's in the fabric of humanity. That sort of lack of.
Okay. So but not exclusive to this one generation. Thank you for your call. Yeah, thank you for your call. Have to move along to Matt in Calgary today. Hello, Matt.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, Matt. What do you think?
Good. It's a few of your callers have really hit the nail on the head that, in the grand scheme, the kids these days aren't as intelligent. But what it comes down to is, the older generations that, are making the decisions in terms of what these kids are learning. How are they learning? What are they doing in school? In the grand scheme, we need to look at it being our fault for making it too easy for these kids, right? We're not pushing them. We're giving them the easy way out of, using the technology, using computers, asking AI, and then the critical thinking just vanishes, right? The problem solving vanishes. I work, just in the winter doing snow removal, machines break, things happen. There's got to be some form of problem solving, even if it's, getting on your phone to Google the issue. And it just isn't there anymore, right? The want of, well, I shouldn't have to do that because, there's technology to do it for me. There just isn't the drive to excel when the option has always been, technology has the answer. If technology can't give me the answer, I don't know it. And it comes down to us enabling that and, giving all of the kids all of these laptops, all of these Chromebooks and, technology from birth and raising them on TV and raising them on the iPads and stuff. And in the grand scheme, we can't blame them for giving them that world, I think, is the unfortunate thing we really need to look at.
Yeah, really interesting. That if Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations, blame us for that. We did it to them. We created this environment where, to the previous caller's point, their muscles have atrophied. Fair enough? Yeah? Oh, he's gone. Okay. Be right back. Thank you, Matt, in Calgary. John, Donna, hang on the line. Get to you coming up next on Talkback News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The claim is being made Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations and that's never happened before. And it's being blamed on excessive screen time, particularly in the classroom setting. John in Calgary. Hi, John. Thanks for calling, John.
Rob, great show as always. Thanks for having me on. But I'm
you,
so
John.
disappointed with the comments that I'm hearing. Is this generation less intelligent? The answer is a solid no. If you look at the schoolwork and the tests of a grade 12 in maths or chemistry, they're far superior to what we studied when we were young. It just isn't true. I think there are a couple of things that are changing. I think it was Einstein that said, I don't need to know everything. I need to know where to find everything. So there's definitely less knowledge being stored in kids' heads, but they have access to 100,000 times the information that we ever had. What we've got to do is teach kids how to problem solve and find it. And it is insulting that people say brains are atrophying. No, they're not. But it is not the same. Now, here in Alberta, they haven't taught spelling or maths. It haven't taught spelling for probably 10 years because it's not a skill that really we need anymore. People will argue with that, but of course we've got all the technology that improves it. Well, probably what we've got to do is build people's strength, tenacity, and problem building skills. But, there's one or two callers that say, well, it should be like 15 years ago. Like, what does that mean? Well, make it 100 years ago. Let's go back to the horse and buggy and have polio. The answer is no. We've got to build kids for the generation that's coming. That means we've got to teach them how to find information because it's all out there for them. But are they less intelligent? I think that's insulting, and I think it's a rock solid no, they're not.
All right. Thank you. Very good counter argument there. John, thank you. To Donna in Halifax. Donna. Hi, Donna.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
The majority, not all, of the kids today, everything should change right from the time they start school. There should be rules, consequences, and a lot of the kids, and I blame it on the schools and the parents. They're lazy, entitled, anything they want, the parents go get, they don't worry about it, anyway. And what they do now, when you're in school, nobody fails, so you don't have to do your best. Everybody passes. Now, unless this has changed, somebody told me this is what they do, because, you got to move on with your schoolmates. And what happened here in New Brunswick a while ago, a few weeks ago in the news, they said a lot of the kids were being absent from school, the high school kids. So what they've done, they've catered to the kids now, and every 2 Fridays a month, they have the Fridays off. That's catering to them. They should be going to school every day, no ands, ifs, or buts. And my sister out west, her grandson in junior high and high school, every Friday afternoon they have off. That is not teaching them when they get out to work. They're going to say, oh, gee, I got Friday afternoons off in school. I'd like to have Friday afternoons off when I work. And that's why work ethics for a lot of the people when they get out working are not the greatest because they're being spoiled when they're in school. And something else, there's a guy that I know, he owns an hotel, so he's got a few bucks. He told me he took his 2 grandkids out for lunch, and he was going to give them a big check, like before they started back to university. Both of them were on the phones, and he said, that's it, let's go. And, they kind of got upset. And he said,
right.
If you're going to be on your phones all
Right.
day.
So you think they've been coddled, they're spoiled, and they're entitled, but are they dumber? That's what I'm trying to get at because that's one of the claims that's being made. 1-833-668-2577. Hour number 2 coming up.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. We have been exploring this claim made by a neuroscientist during testimony to the U.S. Congress that Gen Z is actually less intelligent than previous generations. He says this never happened before. Blamed on excessive screen time. Is that true? Do you think it's true? A number of people don't think it's true. 1-833-668-2577. I'd actually never heard this term before until I started reading more about this issue, screen time leading to cognitive impairment of young people. So the claim is made. The Flynn effect. Okay, the Flynn effect. It refers to this idea there has been a long-term and steady increase in IQ scores over time, increases that have been substantial and consistent and for the most part linear. It says public education systems have improved over time. Children have spent more time in school, more time in post-secondary educational institutions. There have been improvements in public health that partly explain this. So as a result, IQ scores rose generation after generation in countries all over the world. But now some people are raising the alarm and they are saying that was until now. With this generation, Gen Z. And now scores on standardized tests are declining, especially with math and literacy. There's been a decline in the ability to problem solve, attention spans, the ability to focus, concentrate, retain information, all on the decline. And much of the blame is being placed on the ever-increasing use of technology. And people who study this for a living say we're seeing a reverse Flynn effect. And that there has been a noticeable and measurable decline in cognitive skills with Gen Z. Is it true? Do you see it? Do you see it in your everyday life? When you interact with someone in this age group, again, Gen Z, 14, 15 years old, mid to late 20s, do you notice it? Is it really happening? If it's really happening, what should be done about it? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Dawn in Red Deer. Dawn up next. Hi, Dawn. Thank you for calling.
Hi.
What's your opinion,
Rob.
Dawn? Hi there.
This is very interesting, and I agree somewhat with all of the callers so far. I think that if the school settings were better for studying, the classrooms, they're too overcrowded, and we know the story there. What if we went back to, as an example, grade 1 to 6, and we teach them the 3 R's? And when they have reached a skill level of learning that, it might be sooner than grade 6, then they are allowed a Chromebook. We don't reward them for success anymore. I don't think we challenge them enough. And I think that there is we have to embrace technology, but I think that if we go back to the basics first and then advance them to the technology, I think they would problem solve and use the technology better. I find it really interesting because Google makes me so smart. Someone asks me a question, if I don't know it, I Google it. Wow.
Sure. Are you saying you think children are being exposed to technology at too young an age?
Yes.
Perhaps
I
in
do.
school? Yes. Okay.
And they don't communicate with others as well either, right? That interpersonal skills are missing in a lot of them also. And sometimes I find it heartbreaking when I see the majorities. I mean, if they have a big family, that's a different thing. But I notice that the screen time seems to be, if anyone has a screen in their possession, that's the go-to, rather than have a conversation, read a book, tell a story. You know, there's something in the human interaction that's missing.
And do you think, though, it's making the younger generation less intelligent?
Well, they're not using their brain. And if you don't use the brain and if you don't remember, you don't have to remember. That's where I think if you go back to the basic reading, writing, arithmetic, they have to remember. They have to remember how to spell, how to write, how to do the math. And so it exercises the brain and it prepares them so when they do use technology, they're that much better.
All right. Thank you for your call, Dawn. Doug in Kitchener up next. Hello, Doug. What do you think, Doug?
How are you?
Yes, Doug. Very good, Doug.
I too agree with a lot of the callers, and I don't think they're less intelligent. Intelligence is there. The problem is, like one of your callers, they're not being challenged. And some, I believe it's somewhere in Ontario, school boards are wiping out whipping out books that were quite necessary when I was growing up. I have a 15-year-old grandson who has a voracious appetite for reading, and he is the exception to the rule in his class. His brothers, he's got 3 brothers, and they're all falling in behind. My wife has bought them subscriptions to Owl magazine for Christmas every year, and they subscribe to it, they listen to it, they read it, they use it. Their parents see to that, and it's not so much, again, as I said, that they're less intelligent. It's a matter of fact that they need to be pushed into using it. So we should step back. I really think that AI is in process. One of your callers last week said something about AI, and it changed my outlook on it a little bit. But it's still going to make people lazy, and that to me is wrong. It needs to be managed and harnessed and used the right way, and that's not happening right now. So that's my outlook on the whole thing. I wish they would step back and make kids think for themselves and look at the world around them, because what's that song, 25, a man is still alive? We're heading that way. If we're going to be too lazy, it's a harsh thing to think about, but it could happen. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you. You have a good one too. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines available to have your say on Talkback today about Gen Z. Less intelligent than previous generations. What do you think about that claim? We'll be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Right back to our phone calls. On our topic of the day, is Gen Z actually less intelligent than previous generations? Jeff is in Cambridge. Thanks for waiting. Jeff, you're on the line. Go ahead. What's your opinion?
Hi, Rob.
Hi,
my
Jeff.
opinion would be, maybe technology is doing its harm on kids, but so is other things in their society, like nutrition. You get a child that doesn't eat properly because they're not being, what do you get at a grocery store? Toxins. I'd say 80% of what a grocery store sells is toxins. That's my opinion. So you can't really blame it all on technology.
All right. Well, most of the blame, if not all of the blame, is being placed on technology, particularly in a classroom setting. Too much technology.
Right. But when you see
too much reliance on technology.
Okay, but you can't change it, though. That's something you can't. Technology has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. It keeps progressing. What you can change is how, before a child gets to school, what it eats during school. It's just you see grocery carts being pushed around, and what's in the grocery cart: potato chips, white bread, starches, crap.
All right. You think it has more to do? You think it has more to do with nutrition than technology? That could be responsible for a decline in IQ scores?
Sure.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, well, why not? You take a mouse, put it in a cage, and feed it crap. It's not going to do. It's not going to do what it was before when it was you fed it well enough.
All right.
And then, okay, there's blue light in a computer. There's blue light on a TV. There's blue light, and it goes into your eyes, and then it goes into your brain. That's something no one's talked about yet, which is, it does a lot of harm if you're spending quite a bit of time on it.
Yeah, sure. And one of the data points that comes up in the news stories around this is that children now are spending half of their waking hours on screens, which I think might be actually a modest figure. I think it might actually be more than that.
Yeah, when you put everything like TV, computers, everything together, it's a lot.
All right.
What
But
else?
you're more inclined to point to what people are eating, garbage in, garbage out. Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Jeff in Cambridge. Chris in Kitchener today. Hello, Chris. What's your opinion?
Hello, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this is. I think we should go back to the basics. Like when I'm going to be 62 this year. Grades 1 to 8. Get the computers out, get the pencils and papers out, and teach them how to do long math, all the 5 R's. Agree or?
Well, I'm wondering why you think that would be beneficial, because it's been argued, say, by previous callers, that's not the world we're living in anymore.
Yeah, no,
We
and
don't
I
live in that
understand
world anymore,
and,
right?
and they're
Okay.
not less intelligent. I mean, for me to go on a computer, who am I going to go to? My kids, right? I mean,
Fair enough.
I'm stumped on how the technology is working at the moment, but just the basics, not to be able to read cursive writing and stuff like that. I mean, I grew up on that. I mean, there was courses in that from grade
Yeah, sure,
1 to 8.
but if I could, Chris, what good is cursive
Okay, yeah.
writing these days in 2026?
Well, you know what?
Who's
What
communicating
happens if
through
the power-
cursive writing anymore?
Well, you know what? It is one thing that if the power goes out, what happens? You know what I mean?
Right.
If the technology isn't there because you are reliant on it,
Yes.
where are you at? Like the previous caller had said, the cashier could not equate the change that he needed from a $10 bill. I mean, that's
right.
simple math in my head. So,
Sure thing.
And then has
Yeah,
to
even
go
I
to a
could do that one.
calculator.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Back to basics. Popular opinion today. Back to basics. Have to get back to basics and work out that gray matter. Popular opinion. 1-833-668-2577. Have your say on the topic of the day. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Gen Z. The claim is out there. Media reports have been written about it. Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations. Something they say they've never seen before. This has never happened before. It's because of excessive screen time. But do you think that's true? If it's true, what should we do about it? 1-833-668-2577. Zach is in Calgary. Up next. Hi, Zach. You're on the air.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Zach. Thank you. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of variables to this. I definitely notice the younger generation struggle, not just in like raw intelligence, but their emotional intelligence is rock bottom too. Unless there's something in the water or food, like a previous caller said, our wetware is, so to speak, the same. So I'm just looking at what we do differently, and I kind of have 3 different angles I was reflecting on. I think modern education often prioritizes subjective feelings over like the disciplined pursuit of logic and wisdom. I do think the constant digital stimulation erodes like the idea of deep focus and critical thinking. It replaces, contemplation with reactionary consumption. And I do think like a lack of fortitude is a big problem too. Without a solid like intellectual or moral framework that values enduring through challenge and sacrifice, many remain in a state of like adolescence.
Okay. Yeah, lots of big words there. Let's, so to speak, dumb this down a little bit. What do you mean?
Yeah, for sure.
What do you mean?
Where do you want me to
When you're talking about the fortitude, what do you mean? What do you mean? Then they're not tough enough?
Well, it's like remaining diligent and pursuing through a challenge instead of just giving up. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like that, you're like encouraged to keep keep going, even though you're enduring something that's difficult or you're failing. You keep pushing forward, and that really helps, I think, strengthen people's intelligence and will. But the screen time too, I noticed, like, I have two really little kids, and when you watch the shows that they gear towards children now, they are very, in my opinion, dumbed down compared to like what I grew up with. You listen to Mr. Rogers as an example, and he didn't speak down to children. He spoke to children as an adult. Does that make sense?
I suppose. And how has the tone changed?
A lot of the shows now are like very like basic, very noisy, lots of noises and colors, kind of not coherent. It's not like when Mr. Rogers would teach a concept, just as using him as an example, he would explain a concept, he would talk through a concept and kind of bring like an adult thing down to a child's level without kind of demeaning the child's intelligence.
All right.
Whereas now the kids shows are very like, just a lack of a better word, dumb. Like
okay.
It's just noise.
All right. So we only have about a minute left here. You mentioned you think that, say, public education is too focused on how students feel.
Yeah.
Did I hear you right?
Absolutely.
Instead of providing them with the basic foundations of knowledge.
So
is that what you're saying? All right.
Instead of learning facts, it's more of a discovery-based learning. I've heard that term thrown around.
Yeah, discovery-based. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've heard that too. Okay, thank you, Zach. Interesting. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of time to fit you in. On Talkback today, this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about claims that are being made that Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations. Something they say has never happened before. It is blamed on the excessive use of technology, electronic devices, screen time. Do you think it's true? What should be done about it if it's true? Not everyone agrees that it's true. Who's called in to talk back today? I'd like to know what you think. To Linda in Southern Alberta. Hello, Linda.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. Good to hear from you. What's your opinion?
Well, I took some child development courses, and we were taught that kids' brains are like sponges. They'll absorb anything you throw at them. But if you're not throwing stuff at them, then parts of their indite or whatever they're called drop off. So they absorb less and less and less. So basically, use it or lose it. And I think that's the same with kids as they grow older as well. And there was research that said when you write pen to paper, you use far more of your brain and your thought processing than you do with technology. Technology uses like maybe 1% of your brain. So for me, I'm thinking they're not being exposed enough to use their brain when they're using so much technology.
Right. Well, but what if it's the technology that's, to use your words, throwing stuff at them that they can then soak up as a sponge?
Well, I think they would if they've been doing that continually. Because like I said, if you're not using it, like they're just saying, you could teach kids language, you could teach them songs and singing and music and everything, like at 2 and stuff, and they'll pick up on everything. But if they're not being taught certain things like music or whatever, then that area of their brain kind of just dies off for learning. And then they might just go into, like if they're major sports, but they don't do the other thing, right? They're not an all-rounded learner.
All right. Do you believe this claim that Gen Z is less intelligent than previous generations? Based on these, IQ scores, standardized test scores, these sorts of things.
Well, it would be if their brain hasn't been fed, right? So it's dying off. So intelligent-wise, as in what do they have to work with? I mean, if you have some parents that make their kids do all this stuff and everything else, they excel at all of these things because they are being exposed at doing these things, as opposed to somebody else who just comes home and sits in front of the video games or computer and just plunks things in. Certain part of the brain is being used, but the whole brain is not being used.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you. Linda in Southern Alberta, we have free lines available there. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I mean, not everyone buys this. Not all of our callers buy this today. There are experts who dispute that this is happening. They say, okay, some skills might be declining. Maybe others are emerging. For example, maybe some members of this generation, maybe they would struggle if they had to read Moby Dick and then write a book review about it without any help from the internet or from AI. I wasn't a big fan of writing book reviews when I was in school. We didn't have AI. We didn't have Google. We had Cole's Notes. Anyone of a certain vintage might remember Cole's Notes, right? That was the go-to for your book review. So maybe it isn't as new a thing as some would make it out to be. What do you think? There are others who also study this sort of stuff for a living. They say we're not measuring the right things. And that cognitive skills might not be declining as these standardized test scores would indicate. Rather, younger people are shifting into new skill sets. Digital reasoning, they call it, or information navigation, which is kind of what John in Calgary was alluding to. Why do people in their teens need to retain so much information when there's a world of information out there? And others are saying what passes for modern intelligence isn't the same as it used to be. We're measuring the wrong things. It's not that they're less intelligent, rather intelligence is evolving. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. John is in Calgary right now. John. Hello, John.
Hello. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, John. What do you think?
Oh, I think that generation is losing intelligence. It's cognitive learning. It comes back to that, like handwriting. It teaches the brain to function. It builds pathways through it, and it helps your brain learn more, pick up more. One thing I just also want to throw in, it was Generation Z that started eating dishwasher pods. Like that right there is kind of a like chemical. Let's put that in our body and eat it. Like, right. Yeah, it's definitely, education system is falling behind when you're using technology so much. You can't, telling a kid to do something and being there to follow through it's priceless. A computer.
But why do you think, for example, writing by hand? Why would that be better for a child than typing stuff out on a keyboard? What's the difference?
You're not performing the proper functions to build synapses through the brain. It's just click, click, click. There's no handwriting. There's no like spelling it out. I wish my wife was here. She could explain this easily. But it's the connections that your brain forms when you're doing things for yourself, opposed to just hitting a button. Every button is the same. It just comes up on a keyboard and something different. But when you're handwriting, you're building those pathways through your brain of learning and educating yourself. Like computers is a good tool to help find information, but that's the other problem. There's so much information out there. Our brain is programmed like, oh, it's right here. I could easily access that in 10 seconds, opposed to actually learning it and experiencing it and learning off and building off of it. We don't do that anymore because the computer has all the answers right there.
All right. Thank you. John in Calgary. I mean, if you wanted a big blockbuster attention-grabbing headline about this topic today, I think it would look something like this. All caps, Gen Z, dumbest generation ever. Screen time leads to generational cognitive decline. Is there any truth to that, though? 1-833-668-2577. Have your say on Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Gen Z. Is it really less intelligent than previous generations, as some claim? Paul in southern Alberta. What do you think, Paul? Hi, Paul.
Hi, Rob.
Hey,
Hi, Rob.
what do you think?
Well, I am a teacher, and I'm responding for 37 grade 10 students for you right now. Gave them a chance to listen to 15 minutes of your show just before lunch, and their perspective on their intelligence level compared to past generations is they're absolutely not less intelligent. They talked about factors for the last 20 minutes that influence their education system that haven't been brought up in the discussion that we listen to anyways on funding, social aspects, overcrowding in classrooms, standardized testing, and how that standardized testing is dated often. So they've asked me to find the research that was presented to Congress, I guess you were saying, and we're going to take a look at the actual test that was given, the results that were reported on, and we're going to discuss how valid this actual research is. And I'm wondering, because we didn't get to listen to your whole show, has any of your respondents asked, where do you find this research? And because if not, my grade 10 students asked me a question that wasn't asked by any adult from your show.
All right. It was recent testimony earlier this month, Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, to a committee of the United States Senate. I believe it was the Technology Committee of the United States Senate.
The one comment that was made about
a neuroscientist. Yes.
Okay. The one comment about technology in the classroom. I've been teaching 32 years, so I've seen a couple of generations through my classrooms. I don't think people are aware of the focus of education in Alberta right now is primarily literacy and numeracy. Now, are we doing calligraphy still? No. Are we talking about gas lanterns? No. Are we talking, times have changed, so we've actually had to deal with our resources with textbooks being out of date. We need the technology somewhat in our classrooms to be up to date with the information. And the students referenced that in their conversation just a few minutes ago, that if we were still working with the textbooks that we currently have in our high schools, we would be talking about 1975 or 1990 information. So it's an interesting concept to say we're not working with numeracy and literacy within our schools, which we are. Every school division in Alberta will tell you they are. And the number of actual screen time hours in front of our students is a lot less than what most of your listeners were saying. I'm not saying we can control what happens outside of the schools, but we definitely have a good handle of what's going on within our schools. With the removal of handheld devices in our schools, it's a lot less screen time now than what a lot of people think it is, for sure.
All right. Again, I'm just going to come back at you with the claims that are being made. Okay.
Okay.
IQ scores down, scores on standardized tests declining, especially math and literacy, decline in the ability to problem solve, declines in attention spans, the ability to focus, concentrate, and retain information, all on the decline. How do you explain that? Or did you dispute that?
I guess I'd have to take a look at the research first of all. I know standardized tests here in Alberta have increased the difficulty in the last 20 years. Curriculum is increasing. What a child gets in grade 6 math is a lot more difficult than what they used to do in grade 6 math. Standardized tests have been proven to be not the greatest indicator on intelligence. And the other social factors, funding factors that my students brought up as 15 and 16-year-olds have not been talked about. When you're shoving 37 students into a classroom and asking them to then reproduce the knowledge level that's on a standardized test to regurgitate what's been spoken to them, I'd say retention has not changed since I've been teaching, and that's 32 years.
All right.
Intelligent level.
Thank you. You've made your points, and we're tight on time, and a lot of calls to get to yet. So say hi to your class for me. Be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's not a lot of time to get to everybody here. Very busy today on this topic. Gen Z, less intelligent? Patricia, what do you think, Patricia? What's your take on it all?
Hi, I'm calling in response to what I've heard on the radio today, the last caller. I'm in agreement with the textbooks aren't up to date. My daughter's also a preschool teacher, and she sees that the children can't regulate themselves when they get upset and so forth because COVID screwed up a whole lot of kids. But mine goes back to the caller about where they're not teaching cursive and all those other things in school. I'm a quilter. Luckily, my daughter knows how to do cursive because she's now a quilter. And so when you're a sewer, a quilter, and you're in arts, those techniques that you're taught with cursive help you with your eye coordination with other elements. Say painting, say quilting, sewing. I could go on, but you've got a lot more callers to go through. So I wish they would bring back cursive because my daughter's now turning blind, but at least she knows the movement of how to do those things for hand and eye or memory. So it helps with memory as well. Kind of thing, reading old documents that are
I guess what I want to get at, Patricia, is has the technology proliferated to the point now where it really is causing cognitive decline or stunting? Stunting was one of the words that was used in one of the reports about this. It's stunting cognitively.
Yes.
Young people.
Yes, because because I just applied, a couple of years ago I applied for a job. They wanted a handwritten cover letter in handwriting. If this generation of people don't know how to do cursive to apply for these jobs where they want to see that, because a lot of these people are looking at how is their brain working? How is how is it working to write those and the spelling? Okay, because auto check is you understand when you're doing a text message. Oh, AI is going to take control and do auto check. Well, I'm 60 years old and we use WhatsApp, Zoom, and the amount of times we have to retype what we're saying in those documents is unreal because AI doesn't understand, but AI is taking over. And so if you don't understand what you're trying to say and you just press send, it could have a totally different meaning. And I'm going to take one word from my divorce, the word illicit. A lawyer used that word. There's two spellings for two different meanings, but AI put the wrong word in there. And I thought she was going to harm me. Okay, so do you see where I'm coming from now?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your call. Thank you for all of your calls. Very interesting discussion today. No really clear trend, I think, one way or the other. A lot of division, I guess you could say. Long division. 2 hours worth of division on this topic about Gen Z. But thank you for taking the time to call. We'll do it all over again tomorrow with a brand new topic and more of your calls. And of course, always the latest breaking news. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.